Right, so everyone who's come here has heard me and my speech 3 about the nuclear carbon pollution, the solution is nuclear, blah blah blah. They're like, aren't there any downsides to nuclear? What happened in Chernobyl and stuff like that? Well, nuclear energy deals with nuclear fusion, which uses highly radioactive materials, and in both the handling and use of these materials, there's of course radioactive danger poisoning, and if it isn't handled correctly, there's a Chernobyl meltdown. But this happens due to a lack of proper insulation, the whole system overheats, essentially melts the surroundings, exposing the system to the effects of radiation. The information presented in Synthesis, Characterization, and Corrosion Behavior of Simulant Chernobyl Nuclear Meltdown Materials by Sean Barlow is a study on how Chernobyl melted down, and as such, there's been methods and mechanisms that have been created and tested in order to reduce the chance of any mechanism-related failures. And of course, when that comes up, people are like, well, why don't you just avoid all the failures anyways? Why don't you just go with something like solar panels? And to that I say solar panels don't usually generate enough energy for that. Well, they're like, well, they do generate some energy. Why else would people use them? And then they ask how much energy they generate. And it's like, okay, so while solar panels reduce the rate of carbon in the atmosphere by replacing the fossil fuels, they're not used in reducing the amount of carbon that's already in the atmosphere. Shafiqur Rahman's cost of solar energy generated using PV panels already states the value of being 10,077 megawatts a year, which is enough energy to provide for the landscapes that they're on. But the part of the problem that we're focused on is that it's not cleaning any carbon in the air. And we needed to clean carbon in the air, otherwise the problem will not get solved and it'll just slowly increase over time. So yes, solar panels make an impact into energy production, but no, they don't make enough of an impact into energy production. And then to build off of that, people usually say something like, okay, well, solar panels are good and all, but the big companies won't want to use that because they're not that good. Like, what other ways would companies want to reduce energies? Like, solar panels can't work for powering an entire whole factory. And there's less prominent ways to go about saving energy, and they also reduce carbon emissions. One way is by using PCM, which is a high quality insulator, and although it has a high initial cost, in Saeed Esbabi's case study, The Effect of Using PCM in Building Materials for Energy Saving, they propose that by using these higher quality insulators in the wall of a building, less energy can be spent on heating and cooling, and there's a 30% decrease in the total energy spent. Essentially, using that initial money and starting the spending is enough to actually save money over time. So even in spending money to install PCM in their places, people are still not convinced that companies want to adopt these sort of energy practices because they're like, there's no incentive other than just they make a little bit more money each year from the PCM. However, it's been shown that adopting cleaner energy practices have been proposed to just be cheaper for the company and also cleaner for the environment, so it's a win-win situation. The proposed methods of adopting cleaner energy consist of control systems that focus on creating better efficiency outputs based off the current energy resources. Mike Schultz's The Impact of Energy Management Control Systems of Energy Efficiency states that implementation of energy management control systems could be an effective lever for companies to enhance their production systems and operate towards energy efficiency. This basically means that if companies use these energy management systems and as such be cleaner for the environment, then the costs actually decrease in the long run. So if costs decrease because companies are being more energy efficient and it makes them look better for being energy efficient, there's no reason why companies wouldn't want to do that. And hey, even speaking of these companies, it looks like that all we're talking about is big smokestacks, countries like the US, China, and stuff like that. Are people wonder, are there any other government incentives that work in other places, not just installing PCM or using these energy management control systems, but just incentives in general? Do they work in other places? And the answer is yes. In Vietnam, Sung Yun Kim, in the case of air pollution in Vietnam, presents a method that's being tested where they give money to the government in order to install solar panels. However, in the United States, it's shown to have a low impact. That's because in the US and Vietnam, it's more impactful to spend money elsewhere to reduce the carbon emissions. In Vietnam, Sung Yun Kim points to the education of the citizens as a way to reduce these carbon emissions. The US, while focused on more a large-scale production standpoint, could be applied to nations such as China or other production-focused nations.